neurodivergence, an upsurge in this, or at least an upsurge in what we've become aware of, what is coming to light, spiritual awakening, Kundalini rising, structures that we have known to exist, whether it's medical bodies, whether it's politics, politicians, gurus, spiritual teachers, even celebrities. Anything that we have believed to be in a particular way is crumbling down, both on the level outside of us and in our own lives, in the microcosmic level, in our inner lives, whether it's to do with our life, our relationships, our people around us, our belief systems, careers, relationships, health, money, name it. It's all changing. Why is this happening, and what is actually going on with us? So, as always, it has happened before and it is happening again, is when we go through something called Yug Parivartan, which basically means that we are now changing the yuga or the age. It is not to say that it's the end of Kaliyuga, because there is still a long way to go, but it is the end of a certain part of it, so that we now go on to the next part that then gears us up or arms us for what's coming next. So this is a time for when everything that didn't fit into our light consciousness starts to break away. Everything that is not going to help us for the continuation of us, for our existence to continue, because in order for us to then get to the next stage of evolution, we must have this armor. And the only armor that is applicable in this particular age is the armor of light consciousness, is the armor of, you can call it your rainbow light, you can call it your starseed light, or it is basically you coming into your expanded consciousness, you breaking what so many of you are calling the false matrix, structures, belief systems, karma, conditioning, dogma, religion, you name it. So for example, religion, as it was originally given or originally brought from wherever it was brought, would have been okay had it not been interfered with or adulterated. Similarly, with us, if we hadn't been interfered with a false personality, with false beliefs, with false carriers of how we carry ourselves in this reality, in this existence, then we too would have always been thriving. Now, in a way, we are thriving. What is thriving is the bank of experience. What is thriving is consciousness, because consciousness is ever expanding itself. Now, what that means is you are constantly coming into a state of, I know more now. I know more. I know more. I can see more. Illusions start to dissipate. Now imagine that you are in a bubble. Your experiences can only ever be contained within that bubble. And within that bubble, you may not be able to see all of the possible scenarios, experiences that can take place in that bubble. That bubble is your framework. Now, not only do you think that the smaller bubble that you have created for yourself is the only bubble, but that there is nothing beyond the bubble that you have, which is the bubble of all that is the bubble that is all that is existence. As illusions start to break, you start to see other mini universes or other little bubbles. And then you open up to those universes, those bubbles. And then you come out of your bubble and then you're able to, it's a bit like expanding your friend circle. So you start to expand, and this is where your fluidity comes in, flexibility comes in, your openness to experience comes in, your desire to want to thrive comes in, as opposed to your desire to only survive being in that bubble. So far in your three-dimensional reality, all you have ever been trying to do is to make it in that bubble. When you experience your spiritual awakening, when you now start to experience neurodivergent, or you've come as a neurodivergent, or you know somebody who is, or you are mothering or fathering one, or you have a sibling or somebody who's in close association, so much so that that neurodivergent has an impact on you, or you've got a Kundalini rising. Now, all of these things together, what they do is they break barriers. They break boundaries. And when the boundary breaks, the floodgates open. They can either open gradually or really open. Now, as this is opening, you start to see beyond your bubble. Now, this is where the deconstruction of the false persona, the deconstruction of even your concept of a deity or a God outside of you starts to fall apart. You realize, aham brahmasi, like I am all, right? So I am Brahma, I am. When you start to realize that, is you realize that not only am I not this bubble, and I'm also not the bubble, but you realize that you've always been contained within this bubble, so that existence as it is has always been there. You are never going to cease to exist. And that's when you realize that there is a Mahamai. Mahamai means like a Parashakti, a divine goddess, the one that wants us to be not eluded, but we want to play this because we want to go gather the experience, come back, get to know us, and this thing keeps getting bigger and bigger because that bubble keeps getting bigger and bigger the more experience that we gather and gather. And then you realize that this is just a play of Mahamaya, that actually this veil, even the big bubble, has just been placed, and that there's actually a world beyond that too. So not only are you breaking the veil, breaking the barriers, there are your inner barriers, then the barriers within which are your parameters or your belief systems that, okay, yes, I'm going through a spiritual awakening, but it's got to look in this way. I've got to eat sattvic food. I've got to dress in a certain way. Apart from the lifestyle things, I've got to talk a certain talk. I've got to read certain scriptures. I've got to believe in certain people because, they can't be wrong. They were here before us. All of those things basically fall apart. And this you can compare to now when you're going through a Kundalini rising, when you finally pierce the last knot and you go right through everything and you go up to your crown chakra. Now everything is crystal clear to you. Now at this stage in humanity, not just humanity, just in existence, we need to gather all of the light. We need to gather all that is in all that is, in order for us to break any false illusions, because by breaking this, we come into our light body. Now, the lighter we are, the density is reduced. When this density is reduced, you now have your armor to get through the next yuga or the next stage that we're going to be going through. Now, we all know that artificial intelligence is here, and we also know that it is an intelligence. It is an intelligence, almost an autonomous intelligence, that is going to have a lot of impact in coming times, and it already is having this kind of an impact. So our consciousness has to be of a certain level for us to maintain what we are, for us to remember what we are, lest we get carried away with something that we're not, and then we are extinct. But yet we continue to exist, perhaps not in this dimension, not in this paradigm of consciousness. Now, in order for us to continue with the human experience, continue at this level of living, in this civilization, shall we say, then we've got to raise our consciousness. You raise the bar. Now, what is the first thing you notice when you're going through a spiritual awakening, or you're going through all of this and you're going through your deconstruction of the persona, then you're going through deconstruction of your belief systems, deconstruction of relationships, deconstructions of basically the whole of your life, up until you get to your ego death, right? And after that, you develop a new persona through which you can then operate as an individuate sense of self, knowing that you're still part of the whole self. Now, what happens? Structures crumble. So the way that your life has been crumbling, and now you're at a stage where you're perhaps not so crumbled, or you may still be crumbled, but you're aware, your level of awareness is there. Similarly, structures around us, because the vibration has now reached a certain level, structures around us are also crumbling. It's a necessary part of this evolution. So it's an evolutionary necessity that is happening. It is not something that, it's not something that is optional either, which is why you see so many mass awakenings happening. Apart from mass awakenings that are happening, we have an upsurge in neurodivergence. Yes, we could say, well, it's diet, and yes, it's genetics, and yes, it's all sorts of other things. But what we say is that these beautiful beings, the similarities between them, and when you're spiritually awake, and the overlap, and a lot of neurodivergence will eventually be spiritually awakening, or be spiritually awake already without perhaps going through a lot of what you may have gone through, because they've already reached a certain stage.